Hello, this is Bob Scarborough with Tensoft, and I'm here to give an overview of Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. Dynamics 365 Business Central is really the modern iteration of cloud business system applications. It is a true cloud application deployed and managed in the Microsoft Cloud by Microsoft, and it's really unified with the full stack of ERP and business productivity applications to make your life as streamlined and simple and effective as possible. In terms of the functionality in Business Central, it's what you'd expect from any modern ERP system. There are financial management, core capabilities, and operations management, supply chain, sales and service with their CRM system, which is integrated. One of the top CRMs on the market, project accounting, project management, and you can get deeper into manufacturing operations and so on as you need. For those of you not familiar with Microsoft as a cloud ERP provider, it's worth spending a moment just talking about Microsoft and their investment in and focus on business systems and business system applications. Microsoft got into ERP through a couple of acquisitions in the early 2000s. They're no longer subsidiaries, but part of the unified stack and solution set from Microsoft. From when Satya Nadella took over in 2014, where there was a partial cloud focus prior to that with the previous CEO, there's been this huge focus since that point of cloud first, cloud all the time. And that's made a big difference, I think, in terms of the outside investors and the stock price, where really you have this rapidly growing leading industry company delivering cloud applications and cloud platforms to a huge level. And that has dramatically impacted both the business applications as well as the unified approach. Switching from the overview of Business Central and that they are in the market and the general focus and the company, to some more specifics about the application. One of the things is to revisit the unified stack a little bit more. And so by the unified stack of applications, really we were talking to a series of applications that work well together. So right in the middle we have the Business Central here, and that is your core financial system, and it can include the manufacturing and CRM and all the core applications to run your business. You notice the Office 365 over on the left-hand side. And Office remains the leading market suite of applications related to spreadsheets and word processing and presentations and diagrams. And all that stuff is really built to integrate to the Dyn 365 right away. As you'll see later with our presenter, that there are ways to make Excel link directly to the application where you're moving data back and forth seamlessly as you require, or integrating to email and to application objects within forms that move seamlessly between those applications. Beyond this, there's also the Power BI, which is the industry-leading analytics application. Really, it is rated the best. It is also the most cost-effective of all the analytics applications, and it's pre-built or pre-linked to Dynamics Business Central out of the box. There's some things in the platform which may or may not be useful based on the scenario. Some of our AI or artificial intelligence it can be linked into your BI application, where it actually goes through and looks for patterns in your data for you and can add those to your business analytics. The platform itself is really built on the hardware, and the operating system is the Azure platform, which is one of the two leading web application platforms in the market. But they have the Power Platform beyond that, and that does include the Power BI. It also includes a workflow application called Flow, which can both take data within Business Central and outside of Business Central to create unified business process mapping and workflow. And Power Apps is the ability for you to build extensions around the application that leverage data in Business Central, but allow you to create forms and other easily generatable additional code if you need to build small applications to supplement what you do in your ERP system. The common data service is really an evolving high value set or part of this solution, which is all the data from all the sources available in one master data set, allowing you to analyze and report against and manage and generate business process flows against that. Microsoft has a long history of support for enterprise applications. They started in the year 2000 and bought a couple of companies in the early 2000s and really have integrated those. And so we do have the functionality base and technology from one of the applications that the Dynamics NAV application, which had great underlying technology and a service-oriented architecture and web services functionality. And they really turned that into a full, blown, it is a native cloud application managed by Microsoft on the Azure platform. And everything from the rapid release programs and the ability to roll out the code to the management model. And so I think it's worth noting that there's both this depth of know-how and functionality as well as this brand new effort over the last couple of years to really leverage the full strength of the application and to put a modern the user interface on top of it to give you the most value possible. In terms of how they look at the application itself, they are looking at making smarter decisions, which can start by just getting your data out of the application into the charts and into PowerPoint and into whatever applications that you want to Power BI you have. But I think it actually extends beyond that. If you do have a large or complex data set, being able to use the built-in AI capabilities in the platform to leverage those and to see how the data is viewed from that perspective. You can connect your business and really they have literally taken the ability to link applications. Theirs are pre-linked, and that's their unified model where you don't have to spend a lot of time making it work, it just works. And that extends to a lot of things. There's the ability to link to your bank accounts here, where you can set up a link to be doing e-reconcile to your bank often within an hour, or link to your credit card for your corporate procurement card and have that linked into your business system in an hour. And so those things are really made to connect and make your life easier and bring out what's needed for your application. But the starting to grow easily is really two things. One of them is that you can get going in the application directly what it means. But I think you also can think of this as an investment too, that as companies are emerging, as companies are growing, that you're looking at an application that can take you from 1 million to 500 million. You're looking at an application that can grow. It is a true mid-market scalable application, but you're scaling your investment in your technology, you're scaling your investment in the application as you grow as well. This is not something where you have to spend huge amounts of money to get going. You can really be cost effective to start, but it can take you a long way as a business as well. A huge amount of the value in the Dynamics 365 Business Central application is around its ease of use, its unified approach to other applications. I think it's worth emphasizing it's still, it also has the full range of capabilities in the application that you would expect in the financial management, in the sales and service management from the CRM, project management, manufacturing depth, reporting and analytics, and the ability to get insight from all the features you would expect, all the modules you'd expect, all the functionality blocks you would expect are there on top of really the core approach and user ease of use and integrated and unified application set that you'd expect. So to summarize this a little bit further down, a little bit more depth here, we have an all-in-one business management application. And by all-in-one, we're encompassing both Business Central and the capabilities, but also that it extends to the full platform and helps you work with your productivity tools and your analytic tools all in one unified approach. It has a long legacy of functionality and depth of experience and hundreds of thousands of companies using the application, all moved to the cloud with Microsoft ownership and management in a real cloud scalable model. It is part of the Dynamics family. And I think that's mostly just to let people know that there is this significant investment, a significant commitment to this family at Microsoft, that all the applications related to this business are under one family. We've talked about the unified and intelligent and the adaptable services as well. So I'm going to hand you off to our presenter where you can look more at the application and understand a little bit further about how this business can really help you grow in a strong, unified, value-oriented investment way. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Tensoft's Business Central overview. My name is Dan Berube and I am the COO here at Tensoft. During today's session, we'll be taking a look at a broad overview of the system, exploring some key features and some key pieces of functionality that can get you and your team up and running very quickly using Business Central. So let's jump right in. What we're looking at here is a role center page, and depending on what role you choose for yourself, what you see on your role center page may be slightly different than what you see here. There are CAN roles within the system, and we can see that by looking at our settings. So if I look at my settings, we can see that I am in as the accountant role, and I'll stay as that role for this particular overview. But if we look at the list of roles here, we can see roles based on some common functions within your organization. The accountant, obviously, I'm going to be interested in bank recons, journal entries, etc. Your business manager may have more of a need for financial reports and metrics that they want to see. If you have somebody who's focused on sales ordering, sales order processing, invoicing from customers, that person may be more comfortable in the sales order processing role. Regardless of the role, security is set up on top of that. So depending on what you want to have on your role page does not always impact the areas of the system that you can access. So it's a good point to make, is that the role center does not equal security. Security is a separate module within the system. So I'm going to go ahead and click cancel and come back to the accountant role center page. And if we look at what we're presented with as the accountant, we can see we're looking at various modules within the system. As a finance person in accounting, I have an interest in working with journal entries on a regular basis. I may need to monitor or manage my chart of accounts, GL categories for financial reporting. So as we go through the list, the functions I see on my role center are really geared towards the role that I chose. The other thing we'll have access to from a role center that we choose are transaction windows that I may work with on a frequent basis. As an accountant, journal entry is going to be something very common. I can have an option then to create a journal entry right from one click away from my home page. And there we are, into the journal entry window. The other thing to note, a nice feature on the role center pages are the ability to pin Power BI reports to your home page. So Power BI comes with some default reporting from Business Central. You can also create your own. And whether they be default reports or ones you can create, you can pin them to your role center. So if I look at what we have here, here's a Power BI report that we created in a prior demo, and we just have that pinned to the home page. If we want to see what else is out there, we can go ahead and select reports. And what this is going to do is go out and look at the reports I have in my workspace. So I have a handful of kind of default reports out in my Power BI workspace. One of them is relates to the customer. It's not enabled, but maybe this is something I want to go ahead and bring in and see on my homepage. So if I highlight that line, I can enable that and just select OK. That's going to go out to Power BI. It's authenticating me via single sign-on, going and get those reports from my workspace and bringing those reports onto my role center. Now I can see this right from Business Central. I don't need to go out and navigate to Power BI unless I need to drill into more reports or get some more detail that is better served from Power BI. The reports do also work on a carousel, right? So if I want to see what the next report is, I can continue to scroll through those right on the home page, get some quick insights as to what's happening within my organization. In addition to Power BI, each role center may have a set of default reports that are published to the home page. As the accountant, we're going to see a lot of things around financial performance, cash flow, budgeting, etc. Again, these are also on a carousel, and I can go ahead and scroll through those and get different charts, different graphs, different KPIs right from my Role Center page. So it can be changed after the first time. It's not something you have to pick and stick with. If a user comes in and plays around with those a little bit, does a little bit of exploring, they will land on a Role Center page that meets their need. One of the other kind of nice central features to the system is the ability to set the system up fairly quickly and get users on and using that system within a very short period of time. And depending on the needs of the organization, we can go through and actually use the assisted-based setup within Business Central to get somebody up and running. So if I click on our global search, and we go ahead and look for our assisted setup page, we can see a list of kind of key parts of the system that would require us to set up so we can start using the system right away. We can see right at the top, as an example, we need to migrate business data. I might be coming off another ERP, and I need to get those beginning balances. I need to get those P&L numbers into the system so I can facilitate the cutover as well as financial reporting from one point going forward. So if we just take a look at what we do with one of these, if I look at migrate business data, we're going to get a data migration wizard that's going to drive us through the steps of what we need to get into the system. So we'll go ahead and select next. We can see, yes, I have my data in Excel. I want to import that. There are also some connectors to other systems that you may be coming from. So if you are coming from QuickBooks, there's a wizard-driven process for moving that data from QuickBooks into Business Central. If you're coming off of Dynamics GP, there's a wizard for that. Anything we don't see a wizard for a specific system, that import from Excel is going to provide us with templates that we can use to import our data. So we would simply download a template, put our data into those templates, and import those in. And really what we're migrating over at that point is your chart of accounts, your customers, vendors, items that you may have, as well as your beginning balances for those elements. So a really nice way to set up the system, at least get through the key pieces that you would need to start using it. And of course, then depending on the needs, you can get deeper and deeper into the setup of each individual module. The other thing to note then at this point is, outside of obviously needing your chart of accounts from a financial aspect, dimensions become very important within Business Central. And what a dimension is in Business Central is a way for you to add additional information or classify things that are going to hit your ledger. So we may have a salaries account. That's great. We can take a look at what our total salaries are. But at a certain level, we need to then break that out by department. Right? We need to know how much was admin. We need to know how much was R&D, marketing. A dimension may also be other pieces or other important things you want to collect about an expense. Maybe marketing does a lot of trade shows, and you want to capture the expense by a trade show. A dimension would be a great way to do that. And we'll see dimensions is in the finance area, and we'll take a look at what we have in here as of now. So when we look at the group of dimensions, we can see I have one set of a customer group, departments, a very common one. I may be tracking market segment for my customers. And we'll see how these interact with our entries as we go through today's overview. But one thing we talked about was maybe marketing has a lot of trade shows, right? So let's go ahead and add a dimension for those trade shows, and then we'll give it some values that we can use when we come to parts of the demo where we're going to enter transactions. So let's go ahead and create a new dimension. We'll call it trade show. And then we'll give this some values, right? So now I've given it sort of the category that I want to capture, but what is it that I'm tagging on my transactions? So we'll come to dimension values, and maybe we went to CES, maybe we went to the GSA, maybe we had fun and we went to Comic-Con. So now what I'm doing is just creating a category that I can use in addition to my natural GL account to capture additional information. And dimensions they're mix and match, right? I might have a department and a trade show. I might have a department and a market. I might have a market and a customer group, right? So I can definitely use these things interchangeably and then report on them later. The other thing to look at on the finance setup side are my GL categories. GL categories are important for classifying your trial balance into how you write your financial reports. So it's a very easy way to take your trial balance and display it on balance sheets, income statements, and cash flow statements the way you would like to see it. So if I look at our finance menu, again, we're going to see GL account categories. And when we take a look at that, we're going to see really a structure of a balance sheet and an income statement. So we can see kind of, we have some assets listed. What are our current assets, current liabilities? And we can see over in our categories what account numbers we're putting into those categories. So when we do run our balance sheet and income statement, these accounts then group and get categorized into what we want to see on that statement. So to give you an example of that, let's go ahead and run a quick balance sheet. As the accountant, I can get to that balance sheet right from my Roll Center page. I can also run this report directly into Excel. Right? So if I have something and I need to distribute this report to people who like to make changes, maybe add columns, colors, do some analysis on the information I'm going to send, Excel is the way those people are going to want it. We can run these reports right to Excel and right from my Roll Center page. So if I go ahead and select reports, we'll select an Excel report. We'll have a kind of a list here, and we're going to take a look at the balance sheet. So if we keep in mind that those GL account categories that we just took a look at, that's going to be what's going to be driving this format. Right? So what we also get when we implement the system is a list of default categories. So as we're adding accounts, if we're not sure, we can put it into one of our default categories that the system comes with out of the box. That will drive a default financial statement. And as we start using the system and people request more and more information or different ways of looking at that information, we can adjust our GL account categories and push those to our financial statements. Or the system does have something, report writing tool in it where we can write custom financials in addition to these. So as a more advanced feature, the system has account schedules where we can write our own financials. So what we're looking at here is a balance sheet coming back to me in Excel. Today's date, September 7th. And what the system is doing is authenticating me. Right? So it's not just any user. I do need to be a user in Business Central to be able to pull this data out, take a look at it. Now I may distribute it, and those users, when they get the Excel sheet, do not need to be Business Central users, but that initial user who runs the report maybe checks it, saves it out to OneDrive or SharePoint. Obviously, I'm coming into this report from the system. I need to be a user. So if we look at what we have here, we're looking at balance sheet categories driven by those GL account categories. Now, if I look down the list here, I may see something where I have a number that I want to change a little bit. Maybe there's current liabilities is great, but I need some more details here. I like to see maybe my accounts payable as its own line and then group the rest of my current liabilities. So let me show you how easy that would be to just change the default financial balance sheet, default financial report in our system. So we'll go ahead and we'll close that off and we'll go into our GL account categories. So we go down to our current liability section. We're going to edit this. We'll edit our list and we will add a line for AP, let's say. So let's take accounts payable out and put that on its own line. So we're just simply adding a row within the structure of the GL account category. I give this a name. This could be any name that I need. And then we'll go ahead and grab the account I want to associate with that category. So now I'm going out and looking at my chart of accounts and saying, okay, yes, I want accounts payable on this row. I don't want it grouped into my current liability area. And then from a cash flow perspective, I want that account to be my operating. We can then go ahead and generate account schedules from here. This is what the system is allowing us to do, is push this out into the default account schedules that the system comes with. So right from my chart of accounts, I'm not going into any report writer. I'm reclassifying an account that then is going to flow into the default financials. So a very quick way to update your balance sheets and income statements. So we'll go ahead and generate that account schedule. It's going to take this change, push that to my financials. Let's go ahead and run that balance sheet again. See what it looks like. So we'll go right back to my Role Center. We'll go right back into our reports and choose to do that via Excel. And as we wait, we'll see, obviously we're going to have a different category there, but the flexibility there to create your own GL account categories and then just have that push to default financial statements is a very efficient way to get those kind of quick reports out to people. Right? Obviously, you'll have people and executives in your organization that need more complex reports. The system does also allow for that through the use of creating your own account schedules through Power BI and through analysis views, where we can really take those dimensions and do some reporting around that. So some really great ways of getting the data in and as well as presenting that to the people who are using that information to make decisions. So this will just take a second for Excel to open. And then we'll go ahead and enable our editing and enable this content so we can see this in Excel. And there we go. So again, this little add-in is something that Business Central will put into your Excel environment, making sure that the person who's running that report has access to do so. So a portion of this also demonstrating the tight integration between Office products and Business Central. So there we go. So if we look down here, we now see I have the line for current liabilities, but I also have that new row for accounts payable, where I brought that out to its own line. So again, very quick, very easy to do, doesn't require knowledge of a complex report writer. As an accountant or somebody, or even other people who are working in the accountant department that have knowledge of your chart of accounts can go in here, make a quick change, and get those financial statements published. Okay, so as we're still talking about sort of the accountant role and some of the things there, obviously one place that we use the system a lot is journal entries. Standard functionality here, right? I mean, there's nothing over the top here, but there are a few nice features here that make entering journal entries, also reclassifying or classifying those journal entries to those dimensions, easy for us to do. So I'm going to come into it right from my Role Center page. We'll come into a journal entry. I have a journal entry batch for myself for the demo. A journal or a batch of journals can be user defined. So if we have multiple people in the organization that post journal entries, I may create a journal named me, right? I don't want anybody else in there. I may not be finished with my journals. People can create their own batches and work in their own workspaces when they create journals. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these lines to start. So let's do two things here while we're on the journal window. Let's go ahead and delete my lines. And in this scenario, maybe we're coming up on month end and we have to do an accrual for salaries, right? We pay people every 2 weeks, but at the end of the month, we have a few days in the month where they're going to get paid next month, and we need to book an accrual for that. Now, my journal entry for that is very similar. It's the same lines over and over again every month. So what I can do is get a standard journal. So I've created this journal in advance of the demo, but if you look right below that, the first time we create one of our journals, that may be something we do over and over again, I can save that journal as a standard journal. And then that becomes something I can reuse over and over again. So again, very easy to create a journal entry and then even turn that into a template that you use over and over again. But in my case, I have the template, so I'm going to go get that standard journal. I call it salaries. We bring that in. I'm going to get that journal entry in the same way I post that every single month. Now, it's only 9/7, maybe let's go ahead and say it's September 30th. We're doing this at the end of the month. This will give us something to report off of later. And we come across and we can see we have some amounts in here. Now, I elected to create my journal and save the amounts in the journal. If it's something that's the journal entry is the same, but the amounts change, there's also an option to create a recurring journal and not save the amounts. So maybe we change the date and the amounts, and then it allows us to post. So it's really saving me a lot of time in creating that journal entry. The other thing you'll notice here is I have the department code here. So that's my dimension. Right? So I now have a dimension here that I'm assigning to my salaries expense. So it's not just my account, but my department as well. Everything looks good here. We'll go ahead and post. The other thing we'll look at here is, if you remember a few minutes ago, we created a new dimension called trade show, right? And so our marketing department is out there. They're at CES. They're at a trade show. I know that they're incurring expense. Maybe the manager of marketing is sort of submitting to me the estimate of the expense so far that they've incurred for going to CES. So I'll keep my date the same in this example. We come across, I'm going to look up an account on my general ledger so that I can book that accrual and that expense. So we'll just pick an account. So now we're looking at our chart of accounts. So we have an accrued expense account here. So we'll go ahead and put that. Maybe they've already spent $10,000. So I'm expecting invoices from all of my vendors to come in for that. And then let's look at, we might have a marketing expense out there. Let's go. There we go. We'll put it to advertising expense. So I definitely know I want to put this to the marketing department, but if I look across the screen, I don't see an option to add the trade show. What we can do is add those fields to my journal entry window. So what we're going to look at in this case is the ability to personalize a window to add or remove fields that you don't use for those particular transactions. So if I go into personalize, I'll select more and I'll go ahead and just add a field to this window. Right, so this is not a dimension that existed before. My existing journal entry window did not know that I was going to add this dimension. But now that I've added it, it's something that I do want to make sure that I capture on transactions. I can bring that in. So if I just look down, we'll kind of go through. You can see there's a lot of fields on here that we can bring onto a window. So what I'm looking at here on the right-hand side is a list of fields that are available to me should I need them when I make a journal entry. Now I don't want all of them on there because I don't use them all. So bringing them all on and creating extra fields that I have to either tab through or ignore or understand that I don't use is inefficient. So I really personalize the window so it only has the key fields on it that I use on a regular basis. And this is per user. Some users may need more fields than others. That's totally fine. So we're going to go down to shortcut dimensions. I know I have 4 dimensions, so I'm going to bring in shortcut dimension 4 and I'm going to put it right next to the department. So with the personalization, I also get to decide where in the window do I want it. I'm somebody who enters the account number first and then the other parts. Somebody else may put department, trade show, and then account. So they can modify these windows to match sort of how they think about making an entry into the system. Again, something that makes data entry for an end user more efficient. People can then personalize those windows. So I know we have marketing. We don't have marketing, so I'll go ahead and put it to sales. This is the department code. And then we know, maybe I picked the wrong dimension code. Let's bring them all on there. So we'll look at our shortcut dimensions. Let's bring them all. Let's go 3 and 5. So again, I'm bringing on shortcut dimensions because that's what the dimensions that you add to the system will be referenced as additional shortcut dimensions that you can add data to. And let's take a look and make sure it didn't rename it for me. No, so we should be okay. we know it's not 4. Okay, so we can see that I've added a dimension, but I don't yet see it. So what I forgot to do is tell the system, okay, which dimension is this? And so I've created a dimension, but I haven't assigned it to which location that I'm going to pull this dimension out. So right from the journal entry screen, we're going to use the global search. So what's nice about Business Central is I might be here, I see that I have a problem, I can then go correct that problem, come right back to where I was. So we're going to go into our general ledger setup. So where we need to define where we put our dimension is in the general ledger setup. And we can see I've assigned my dimensions to these codes. I'm going to put trade show as shortcut dimension 4. Close that up. Now I have shortcut dimension 4 being assigned to what we had just created earlier for trade shows. So we'll go ahead and we'll grab that value where we now get to see our trade shows. So we're at CES. So what we're doing is accruing some expense against that dimension for CES. And we'll put the 10,000 in there. Actually, to make it a little more, because we'll do some reporting on these dimensions later, let's split this between 2 trade shows. Because we may have some expenses in September, and I want to see what marketing did for trade shows side by side. And I might want to trial balance for this and see, okay, I have trade shows, but what do we do for CES? What do we do for the GSA? And so we can split those, and then we'll show how we'll be able to report on those after we get these entries to our general ledger. So we definitely want to hit our department, and maybe the second one was for the GSA. So I'm taking an accrual of $10,000 and splitting that, same natural account, right? So my total expense for the sales department is $10,000. But then I'm going a step further by splitting that inside of that department across 2 different trade shows. All right, so a really great way to add some additional information to what entries will hit your general ledger. Okay, so we will go ahead and post that. So we've got a couple postings on our ledger for September, things that we'll be able to report on as we go. So that's great. We got some entries in there. We've put them to departments. We've created another dimension. We added some expense to a trade show. Now, how do I get to see that, right? Where do I get to potentially now go look and grab that information? One of the easiest ways to do that is going to be via the trial balance. All right, so if I look at, let's go to our trial balance. We'll do that from our chart of accounts. So we'll take a look at that as well. So if we look downward, when we look at our chart of accounts, we are just going to see the naturals at this point. Right? I'm just looking at what do I have in cash? What do I have in accounts payable? If I go down and look at our marketing expense, right, we put that in advertising, we're just going to see the total, $10,000, right? But now I know that we've split this into other dimensions. So if we go ahead and run a report, let's run the reports from over here. Okay, so what we're going to report on is using the trial balance, looking at our dimensions in this case. So we'll start by looking at a global dimension first. So we'll look at our spread by global dimension. And I know one of my global dimensions, which is kind of, in this case, is the dimension I set up as a default, right? Something that I really do want to capture on every transaction. So I set that up as a global dimension. We have some default reports that can do that. So if we look at a trial balance, we're going to get some options here. So I've run one of these before, but what we're looking at here is I want to run this by my department. And then below, I want to run it for posting accounts. And maybe I only want to look at the expenses. I'm not using departments or this particular dimension on balance sheet. So I don't want those accounts to come in. If I look at the options here, I also can exclude income and cost of goods sold. Right, so I'm only looking at potentially my operating expense accounts that relate to those departments. And of course, I want to just look at my income statements, and let's run this for a date range that spans the entire year, so we pick up as many transactions as we can. I have an option here to print this to Excel. If you want to print that out, we'll be able to see that open up, and we'll see our expenses, and then side by side see our departments. And again, I did this for departments. We'll look at another method of looking at the dimensions. Let's run, oh, there it goes. Which will be an analysis by dimension. We can do some additional reporting on our trade show in our example. So now I have a very simple trial balance, have my natural accounts here, and if we look at what I have across the top are my departments. And I can see there's that salary accrual. I had some office expense. We can see I have advertising expense, and that is all against my sales department. Now again, in our example, that 10,000 is split even further. So let's go a little bit deeper into that and look at what else we can do with dimensions. So let's go to our analysis by dimension in this case. So I want to do some further analysis. I know I have some additional dimensions out there, and I want to report on them. So I've gone ahead and I've already have a view here, but these views are we can create them, users can create them, they can make selections about getting information regarding the dimensions that are important to them. So I've created one for a trade show. We'll go ahead and that's all set up fine. We'll go ahead and do an analysis by that. And here I'm going to make a few changes to this, because what I want to see is I want to see my trade shows in my columns. I want to see the accounts tab side, and then let the system tell me, what period, what quarter, what year these entries were booked in. So the first thing I'm going to do when I come across here is I'm going to change how I want to see my columns. I want to see this by trade show. And I want to see this for all trade shows. So I'm just going to go ahead and select them all. So I'm looking at all trade shows, putting that in my column. I want to run this for, I know September had a lot of expense, so let's go ahead and run that for the whole month of September. And I'm looking at my advertising expense account. I could also put in a range of accounts, right? I have a range of GL accounts and a range of dimensions here if I need it. I'm going to view that as a net change, and let's view it by day. All right, let's show this matrix. So if we look out at this matrix, I now can see my advertising expense. There's that $10,000 that was posted to sales. But now I can see that $5,000 of it was for CES and $5,000 for the GSA. I can also then export this out to Excel, potentially send this to someone, let them pivot, let them build reports, etc. This analysis by dimension is also used in account schedules, so I can create even P&Ls by these dimensions. I can also expose this analysis by dimension in Power BI. So multiple ways to tag the information, do the analysis depending on where the user is working. Click on our second tab here and get that information out. So here I can see I have CES and the GSA. There's my 5,000. If I look at the time frames it's tracking the day, the week, the month, the quarter, and the year. So if somebody was to pivot this, they can use those elements in their pivot table to get those totals. Okay. That's enough about the GL. Let's go look at some purchasing. Maybe we'll get a purchase order. We need to get that purchase order approved and then turn that into an invoice that we can then pay. So of course, what we're going to do through the purchasing process is going to impact our GL. So we'll also have the ability to add these dimensions to our transactions as we need to. So let's go into our purchasing module. Go back to our home page to do that. So what we'll do in this case, maybe, we had marketings out there, right? They're at CES, they're issuing expenses, but they have a couple things they had POs for, or somebody had to request a purchase order before they went. So we'll go ahead and create a purchase order, and then we'll go through the approval process for that, right? So we can set up approvals in the system so POs get routed to specific individuals, approve that purchase order, so then we can then continue transacting against that purchase order. So let's go to our purchase order page. Clicking a little too fast there. So as you can see, I'm using that global search just to find my purchase orders. And when we come back, and I'll next time I go into the global search, we'll point it out, is I can start typing in just purchase, and I will get a list of all pages, reports, setup pages that have the word purchase in there. So if I'm looking for various purchase order reports, type in purchase order. I can then see all the reports that the system has around purchase orders. So again, a very quick way to find what you're looking for within the system. So I can see we have some existing purchase orders out there now, but we'll go ahead and create a new one so we can get this through our approval process. So we'll go ahead with a new purchase order, and we're going to use our Fabricam vendor. And I don't know the number, but I know the name. So I'm going to go to the name field, start typing in Fabricam. There it goes. So once I bring that in, we get some defaults there. Let's go right to the GL. So we're going to do GL. We'll do advertising expense again. And maybe we had to put a PO in for the booth that we were renting at CES. So let's do, we got a quantity of 1. Sorry, give me a second, pick the wrong account. There we go. There we go, so we'll call it CES booth. We'll do a quantity of 1. Maybe the booth was $25,000. So we have a really nice booth, a lot of features in our booth. We want to ensure that we get our spot. So we have an expense that's potentially coming for CES. Now again, if I look across here, obviously I want to code this to a few things, right? I have some dimensions I want to put this to. I could personalize the screen and bring those dimensions in here, but in the interest of time, we will go ahead and add those dimensions right here in the header of our purchase order. So I take the PO, I look at the dimensions, and I say, well, you know, this is definitely going to a department. There's our department, if I could spell. And we want to put this to the code value of sales. And we also know that this is for a trade show. So let's go to the trade show. And we know this is for CES. Okay. So we're updating our lines with that information so that when the rest of the process takes place here, given that we'll get an invoice and that's going to post to our general ledger, those values will come along with it, updating our analysis. So we have our PO. That's good. That's all I'm looking for here. I can go out then and send disapproval requests. Now I'm logged in as a demo user here. That's going to go out to a team member. So not a full user, but a user who has rights to view information and approve information that where they're set up to do so. So I'm going to switch browsers. I'm going to go over to Firefox here, and we're looking at the inbox for our team member. So team member again is a light license, doesn't have full capabilities, but is able to do things like approve and view information. So that team member then gets a notification. They have an approval request. So we'll go ahead and open up that email. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And we can see a few things about this request, right? We have a pending approval. It's to me. It was created today. I have a purchase order, $25,000 for Fabricam. So maybe I know what this is for, maybe I don't. There's some information here, but maybe not enough really for me to approve. If I look at what I have here in Outlook, because this user is using Office 365 and is a Business Central user, it is going to link that together and allow me to see that document right from within Outlook. So when I come to the document view, this is going to go out, look for the document specified here, and then give me some additional information. Oh, okay, it's for our booth. I can see that. Document date today, that looks good, $25,000. Yep, this is what I expected. I can then go ahead and approve this PO right from my email. So not only can I see the full PO, I can then take the action and approve it. Don't need to log into Business Central as the approver to do this. And we'll just say, go ahead. So now that gets submitted, that approval goes out. Now as a person who entered the PO, obviously I submitted it, I go off, I'm working on other things, waiting for that notification to come back to me. If I go back to our user, I'm going to go ahead and close this PO. It's going to go into our email. So as the person who submitted that purchase order, I'm obviously going to get an email back telling me that that PO was approved or rejected. So it's great, it's approved. I want to get this out and send this to my vendor so I can ensure that I get our booth at CES. So I open my Outlook. I'm going to see if there's any comments or anything here that I need to be aware of. So it's going to go out. Outlook will open this email in just a second. So great. It says here, I can go ahead. I can do this. Fantastic. Okay, I'm ready to go. I want to get this now sent out to my vendor. With an email, I can go ahead and use that document view again. It's going to bring me that PO. I'll then be able to open this up and then send this to my vendor from here as well. So again, if I don't have Business Central open in this part of the process, it's fine. Everything can be done via Outlook. Right? It's connected to Business Central. I can see the document. I want to see a couple other things here, so let's pop that out. I want to double check it before I send it. So now it's going out, opening up that page in Business Central. Okay, great. I see my PO. That looks good. I'm going to go ahead and I can go ahead and print or send this. So if we have email addresses for my vendors here, I would be able to go ahead and send that. Take that out. Yeah, let's send it to myself. Sure. Send it out. It's going to send a PO. Select OK. Let's go make sure I got that. Send that again. Yeah, so we should be OK. And I could add other, you can see here, there's a small body there. I can customize that message. Maybe we want to make that more specific to the vendor. But now that's out. Close that window. We now have a purchase order that has been approved and sent to the vendor, all within Outlook. Right, all of that's happened. I sent the PO to myself. So if I was the vendor of Fabricam, I would get the PO. I can then see that PO, some details. I'll do that from here. Let's open up a purchase order. Get the purchase order. Now my company's getting a booth at CES. So again, showing very easy to do approval process, and even looking at that document and sending it all from within Outlook. So the integration between Business Central and other Microsoft products makes life very easy for these types of things. So let's go back to Business Central now. So I go back to Business Central, got the purchase order. We can see we have 25,000 here. I now get the invoice for this. And I need to get this into AP because now, of course, I need to pay for the booth. So go ahead and open up that purchase order. We get an invoice number from the vendor, so I'm going to put that in here. Let's say booth invoice for our Fabricam vendor. I'm not changing anything. They sent an invoice for the PO value. I'm ready to then post this and receive it so I can create a vendor record. So right from the purchase order, there's a quantity of 1. If we had partials, we could of course change this to a half, or maybe I'm only paying half now, half later. We can process prepayments. So all functionality you would expect around being able to receive or invoice partial POs or process prepayments is available within the system. But in our case, we're keeping it very simple. We're just getting the invoice for that. We're going to go ahead and post that. So we're going to receive and invoice it. So even though it's not inventory, it still wants to do both of those parts at the same time. We would have the ability to receive something. Maybe the invoice is coming later, but we want to get that expense on our general ledger. We can modify this process to incorporate a three-way match. We're going to go ahead and receive and invoice that. And we'll go ahead and open that up. So now what we have is a posted invoice in our system. So we have now an invoice that's been committed to the ledger against our department in our trade show. And now we have a payable due to Fabricam. All right, we have to now get this out so we can pay for this invoice. So let's go ahead and pay. So to pay, we'll go into our payment journal. So we have a payment journal. We're going to go ahead and open that up and have the system then present me with this invoice for Fabricam that we need to pay. So we'll go into our batch. And again, those batch names, they're user defined. We can have multiple batches if you have multiple people paying, multiple payment types. Can really use those journal entry or payment, in this case, payment journal batches as a way to guide the user for what they're about to do. So I come into the screen, I have a blank journal entry here. I don't know, like, there's nothing presented to here. I have to go out and tell the system, what to do. Who should I be paying? I have some past due documents and I want to make some payments. Now in my example, I know Fabricam, we pay them by wire, right? We don't cut checks to them. They prefer wire, we prefer to send the wire. So when I go out and suggest vendor payments, I can make some choices here to only bring me back a vendor or vendors that we pay by wire. So maybe I'm doing my wire payments today, and I'm going to cut my checks tomorrow. So if I come in here, I want to tell the system what to bring me back. I want to give it some instruction. So I want to say, give me all invoices that are due by when. So I'm going to go out a couple months here, make sure we capture that invoice. I'll go ahead and post that today, so we can pick a posting date. I am summarizing this by vendor. I don't want a payment for every invoice. I want to group those invoices together, send the payment with some remittance advice to the vendor, and make one posting for that. If I look what I'm restricting here, I'm restricting the payment method code. So I want to tell the system, I have my code is just the bank conversion. This could be wire, ACH. These are totally user defined, but a way for me to search for specific vendors that I want to present for payment. I might have a payment method of check, wire, ACH, cash. So when I'm ready to pay those vendors or have those invoices presented for payment, I can restrict that search by that field. So I go select OK. We'll get some invoices back. There's my Fabricam. So that's the vendor I want to pay. I know I have an open invoice for them. I know it's $25,000. So here we are. We're ready to pay this vendor. It's gone out and told me, yes, this is due. Based on the date I selected, we now need to pay this vendor. Before we do that, I want to pick how I'm going to pay them here. I want to send them a wire. So we're going to send this via electronic payment. One of the key things, and we get this here from our vendors too, is sometimes we'll receive a wire and there's no notice. We don't know what it's for. We have to call them up saying, hey, great, thank you for paying. Can you send us or let us know what invoices we need to apply this to? What we're able to do here is before we send this file to our bank, we can submit or export the remittance that we're making the electronic payments for. So I'll choose to export this first. We'll take this out of our checking, we'll print one copy, we'll send it to PDF. We do have the ability to email it from here as well. So if I have 4 or 5 vendors I'm paying by wire, I select email, each one of those vendors is going to get a remittance, letting them know that the wire's on the way and what we're paying. But so we can see it, we'll go ahead and send that to PDF. That will pop up a remittance advice for us, have our logo and our address, but more importantly, it will show the vendor what it is we're paying them. Right, so I'm sending a wire for $25,000 and against this invoice number they sent me. So if I was paying 4 or 5 invoices, they would all show here. So the vendor would get this in advance of the wire. So when they get it, they can easily apply that to your open invoices. So now that I got the remittance out, great, that's been emailed. Let's come back in here and generate a file. So we're sending this via EFT. I'm going to get an EFT file, I'm going to upload it to the bank. The bank is then going to process my wires to my vendors. So we generate that file. It'll show us what is about to go out. We only have one, but if there was 4 or 5 or 6, 7 vendors we were paying, we would see those here to include in our EFT file. We'll generate that EFT file. We would then save that. And we're saving this to a location on our local machine where when we navigate to our bank website, I'll save that to my desktop, we can upload this to the bank, and the bank handles our wires. Wires are out to the bank. Simply come back in here, and we can post our invoice or a payment. So now from that PO, it's been approved, we've received the invoice, and we've paid that vendor via wire. This same window would be used if we were cutting checks. Right? I don't have check stock to show you guys, but if we needed to cut by check, we can change this bank payment type to computer check, and instead of an EFT file as the output, you would select your printer, and the checks would be printed. You can then mail them to your vendor. Okay. Last part that we'll cover today real quickly is the sales process. Right? In addition, of course, we have vendors and we have to get invoices and pay vendors, but we also provide services or inventory and goods that we need to sell to our customers. So if we come into, I'll start this example from our customer list. So we can come into our customer master, and from here we can facilitate different types of transactions for a particular customer. The system does handle the ability to go from quote order to invoice if we choose to do so. In today's example, we'll just go right to an invoice so we can get something posted, take a look at what that looks like on an aging as well as a GL posting. So if we're looking at our customer list here, if we notice to the right, I brought in that customer list Power BI page earlier in the demo. That page was showing us a customer here. It can also be pinned to our customer list page. So now I'm looking at this customer. I can see they have some ongoing sales. We've posted a bunch of shipments and invoices for them. I can see sort of what their sales amounts have been historically over time. Let's click on, let's try School of Fine Art. So if we change our selection, we can see that also then changes. And I'm getting some quick information about the School of Fine Art. So again, a Power BI report that we created gets used in Power BI for people who are there. For people who are in Business Central, they can still get those insights from Power BI directly from within Business Central. The history boxes are also key to this. I can see kind of what's going on. I can see this particular customer has an ongoing sales order, so something I've received but not shipped, or taken an order but not shipped. We have 2 invoices, so things that I've shipped but not posted yet. And then I can see I have 59 posted invoices for this customer. So it's a customer I do a lot of business with. They obviously have a larger balance than my other customers, and they're a great customer. They don't return anything, so I have no credit memos for this customer. So let's use the School of Fine Art to generate an invoice. So we come to School of Fine Art, we can take an action. All right, we're going to say a new document. And let's just do an invoice though. Let's go right to a sales invoice. So when we do this from the customer listing page, everything about that customer, all the defaults are going to flow in to the document. So the address, the date, our key contact for maybe where this invoice needs to go. And if I have multiple invoices and I want to change that, I can set that up at the customer level and choose other contacts that customer may have. So maybe it's who issues me the PO. I need to make sure the invoice goes to that person. As long as I have those people set up as contacts within Business Central, I can use those contacts. When I generate the invoice or invoice, I can make sure that invoice goes to the right person at my customer, ensure that they get what they need. It also ensures that I get paid on time. So we'll leave it as Megan. So Megan's our contact there. We're doing this today. That's great. She sent me a PO. So we got a customer PO that I'm going to put in here. I have a salesperson code, so maybe I'm identifying this. I'm tagging these sales against a salesperson because I want to do some analysis later on about orders or invoices and payments based on things that my salespeople out in the field have sold. So our header gets automatically updated. We have some items in our system, so we'll go ahead and leave this item. If we were just selling services, or if it was maybe a service charge or some other type of invoice where I just needed to hit a GL account, I can do that as well. All right, so I can just book something directly to a GL account, goes into receivables, hits my GL where I want it to go. If I choose item, not only am I going to be impacting the customer, the general ledger, I'm also going to be impacting our item subledger, so relieving that inventory from whatever location we may have it. So let's go ahead and sell the school. Let's see, we'll sell the School of Fine Arts. Let's sell them a desk. So we sell them a desk. We then want to sell them that desk from a specific location, right? We know we have desks from the main warehouse. We're only selling them one today. We have some other dimensions that we might want to capture here, right? So maybe we want to capture market code. Maybe they're in Orange County, right? So I don't want to put a department here, so I can leave that blank. So again, we can create those dimensions and use those dimensions on sales transactions, on journal entries, on purchase transactions. I can see here that I picked a location and there's not enough. So if I kind of click out, I can see what we have for this item. So let's highlight the line. Where are you? Let's check our notifications. I'll show those details. So this particular location doesn't have enough, but all locations I have 5. So I do have the desks out there. So right from the sales where I can kind of go check and see where do I have this inventory. So I can see I've got some bad data in here. I have some receipts that where a location was not specified. So to get through this particular example, we'll go ahead and take our location out. And we could set things up to force things to happen, right? We can force dimensions, we can force locations, and the like. So if data entry becomes a problem, the system does allow for setup to happen that forces certain combinations of things to be used. So in our case, we'll just sell them the one desk. Great, we got their PO. We want Megan to get it. This looks good. If you had approval requests on invoicing and sales orders, you can set that up in the same way and would work in the same manner that we saw the purchase order work. But in this case, it's, we got the order, salesperson sends it in. We want to go ahead and post and send that to Megan. Yep, we want to send it to her as a PDF. Now, on the sales invoice side, we're doing this from within Business Central, right? In the PO, we kind of look at everything from within Outlook, and we were able to do it there. As a user in Business Central, if they're in there, they don't need to do anything within their email. They can do everything from within Business Central. Now, Megan's not a real person with a real email, so we will just open this up in PDF, but email capability within Business Central is there. You would be able to then pop that up and shoot that over via email to the customer. So there's our invoice that we can then also send to our customer. Now, within the system, when that happens, obviously we've impacted our customer, so that balance has gone up. I can see my total sales, but there's our balance, and our balance due, so we have some past due things out there for the School of Art, is here. All of these you're able to drill into those numbers and then get back to the source documents that might be driving that. So we can see the list of invoices here. On all list pages, if I want to sort, we can do that. So I can sort this by date, I can sort this by number, I can filter columns as well. So this is true throughout the system, is when I drill into something and I come to a list page, I can filter those, sort and filter those list pages to get that information very quickly. So I'm looking at I see that I have a really old invoice here. We want to see that posted document. They're a really good customer. They usually pay on time. Maybe they didn't get this invoice. I can pull that up. I can go ahead and decide I want to resend that. I'll send this to myself. I can say, yep, let's go ahead and send this out. Change that so that goes out. Select OK. I've now just taken that very past due invoice right from the customer master, drilled into that, saw that was OK, sent that to the customer. So if I look at my email, I should now see that coming in. That'll take a few minutes. if for some reason this invoice is an error, right? We send it to them, we get a call back from Megan. She says, hey, I told the salesperson this is not what I wanted. They told me to keep it and I wasn't gonna have to pay for it. We verify that. Right from the posted invoice, we can go ahead and cancel, which will automatically create a credit memo. Or if there was something we wanted to correct, maybe the price was going to change, we can correct that from here as well. So very easy from within documents to make those corrections. If it does need to be returned or just simply credited, right from within the invoice, we can cancel that. It will automatically create the credit memo, reverse the entries, and apply that credit to the invoice. Right, so all in one step, really taking care of something like a mistake, or even if we wanted to correct that, we can do that right from here. Last thing we'll touch on is, and we didn't show this on the AP side, but very similar, a similar process for this is that, of course, we can run agings, see who owes us what and how old things are, and those reports are available in Excel. Right, so if I look at my reports on the customer master, we can look at some finance reports, and we want an aged accounts receivable. Let's do that as of September 30th. Let's go a little bit later. So we have our transaction dates. We want to print this to Excel. Let's just go ahead and do that. So now what we'll get is a Excel version of our aging. If we need to send this out to different sales reps, or internally we're having a meeting and we need to go over what's due, we can quickly get this, email this out ahead of time, maybe make it part of the meeting request so everybody's got the same set of information when we go talk about what our customers owe. So we'll get that in Excel. As this is going, I'll also mention, if you caught it there, you have the ability to email statements to your customers. You can schedule those statements to run at certain intervals. So if every month that customer needs a statement, we can have that statement go out to those customers, so you can ensure that they know what it is they owe, and potentially how late some of those payments are, if that's the case. It's not too much data in here, but there's our customer master. So we got some credit limit information in here. We can see the balance due and sort of how that flows out as it relates to how old those customers are. You get this in detail as well. So if we ran a detailed trial balance, you would get this broken down in the same format, except this would be broken down with all of the invoices here. The last thing to note here before we end today's overview is there are APIs for each one of these elements that we looked at. So journal entries, purchase orders, sales orders. So if you have something other than Microsoft CRM, for example, and there's a process there that should push something in and create an invoice, the system has open APIs where invoices, customers, journal entries can be created from outside systems if that's part of your business process. So what we looked at here is everything that kind of self-contained within Business Central, but some of those events obviously could be happening in other systems that other parts of your organization like to keep and want to continue to use. In many cases, if there's a trigger or something, an event that happens in that system that needs to happen here, it is possible to bring that information in from those systems. Also, when we looked at that purchasing approval workflow, we did that within Microsoft Flow. So as part of Business Central, you get access to Microsoft Power Apps and Microsoft Flow. And Flow makes it very easy and flexible for us to create triggers on events that need to go out to certain individuals. Maybe it's not an approval, maybe it's they want to know if something posted to a certain account. Maybe they want to know if a checkbook balance reached a certain level. We can use something like Microsoft Flow to look at those events and then send alerts out to people within the organization. So very tightly integrated with the rest of the Microsoft stack. So that concludes sort of our overview for today. Again, if you have any specific area you'd like to dive deeper in, please feel free to contact us and set up a demo, and we can answer your specific questions. Thank you very much. Have a great day.